Everyone, and welcome back to the Shivering Mouse. I am so excited to have you back with me today, and we're going to go ahead and talk about my top 10 Disney attractions at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. So brace yourself. These are my personal favorites. These are not a top 10 ranked by the Walt Disney Company or anything official like that. Just kind of my favorites, and based on what I heard from my nieces on Friday's podcast too, it sounds like I'm pretty much in line with what kids like to ride these days. So number 10, I had the Jungle Cruise. I love this attraction. Those of you who know, I'm a nostalgia buff. I love the older, more original attractions. Jungle Cruise is fantastic because you feel like you're going through rivers all over the world. You feel like you're going through the Congo and the Amazon, and you go through this cool Indian temple that's absolutely beautiful. And even though you're going right under the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse, you really don't notice it that much, and it's just really cool. It feels very immersive, other than all the way awesome dad jokes that my husband loves so much. You feel like you really are immersed into a very different place, and I really, really love it. It's so exciting. And I'm getting short here. Hang on. There we go. A little taller. There we go. I've been working on growing, guys. It's just not happening. Next on my list is Space Mountain. Space Mountain is actually one of the first things you see as you're approaching the parks, which makes it a huge kind of buildup of excitement as you're headed to the Magic Kingdom, because you can see it from the monorail, you can see it from the boats, you can see it from the parking lot. I mean, you see it almost as soon as you see the castle, and it's so exciting. It really helps build up that anticipation, and then when you're on it, the payoff is fantastic. It's great, because the fact that you're in the dark really gives the illusion of you traveling much more quickly on the roller coaster than you actually are, and so that really, really makes you feel like you're just flying through there. And sometimes while you're flying through there, you see little bits of other pieces of track going above you and over you, and they're so close sometimes that you get a little nervous, which only builds even more. And I just love Space Mountain. It's funny because it's not a fast roller coaster, it's not a big roller coaster, but you get a pretty good amount of adrenaline for the size of this coaster, and I really, really like it. Next one on my list is kind of the opposite. It's not at all coastery. It's the TTA, the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, or the TTA People Mover as it's called now. It's had so many different names, guys, but they're fantastic. I love that it's supposed to be kind of basically the subway of tomorrow, so it's up in the sky instead of underground, and I love that it takes you through Tomorrowland, so it kind of gives you a break to get off your feet, and it's a little bit of a cooler spot because you're in the shade. I love that it goes right through Space Mountain, and if you time it just right, you can see Space Mountain with the lights on. A lot of people are a lot better at that than me. I've never managed to get through there while the lights are on so I can see the inside of Space Mountain, but I've heard it's pretty cool, and I think there's probably a lot of competition to get in there just right at the right minute, because I think a lot of people who know that you can see Space Mountain with the lights off are all kind of trying to vie to get in there at just that right time. Next, I have Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain is super iconic. It's one of the first things you think of when you think of the Magic Kingdom. And from what I heard from my nieces last week, this is one of the things that stuck out most to them on their trip, and I can see why. It includes classic American folklore. It includes some of the most well-known songs in Disney history. It is incredibly popular. It has a big thrill. It has the threat of somewhat sinister vultures. It's just a Hi, Bailey. It's her birthday today, so I'm letting her photobomb. But it's just a fantastic attraction, and it's something that you remember with you as you leave the parks. It has one of those great moments, kind of like being just under the tracks on Space Mountain, where you feel like you're going to hit the thorns as you go down the big 5-story drop. I'm going to move because I think she wants to get on the couch. There we go. And so it's really pretty exciting, and I was right. And you really do feel like you're getting very close to hitting those thorns coming above you, and of course you don't, but there's just that sense that you're getting a little closer than you're comfortable with. Next is Thunder Mountain. I'm sure some of you are a little surprised that I put Thunder Mountain Railroad above Splash Mountain, partially because it has a story that's made up for the attraction as opposed to a classic folk story. Stories made up for attractions are good too, though. I mean, let's be real, they're pretty great. And Thunder Mountain has a great story. However, part of why I put this one higher up than Space Mountain is because of its nighttime rideability. I love riding on this attraction after dark while the fireworks are going. It's so exciting, and usually you can just go around again and again and again. And it's such a great view of the fireworks. It's fantastic. And again, like Space Mountain and Splash Mountain, you do have an excellent little moment where people kind of are going woo, woo and pull their arms down a little bit because you head right under the rib cage of a dinosaur, and both of my nieces loved this part of this attraction as well. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a very fun coaster. It's also not a super intense coaster, like you don't go upside down or anything, so it's an excellent starter coaster for kids who might be a little bit nervous of like the very idea of a roller coaster. And so it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of hop in there and get a chance to start them out slow. Next, I have Mickey's PhilharMagic. I love this attraction. Even though it's just a 3D show, you're not going to scream, you're not going to raise your arms in the air. I kind of love the rivalry, we'll say, and just to make it sound much nicer than it is, the rivalry between Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. And they really feed into this in this attraction. And they also have fantastic Disney songs, which, if you know, I'm just obsessed with Disney songs. And then they have, a mix a bit of the Sorcerer's Apprentice in there, and it's just like a cocktail of phenomenal things. It's like a great stuffed casserole. I love this attraction. And of course, there's always the come inside and beat the heat factor too, so you can kind of cool down in there. Number 4, I have the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I was prepared to dislike this one, guys. As you know, to me, as a nostalgic, when Disney messes with a classic attraction, I feel like they're messing with my childhood. Like, I kind of feel like they're doing surgery. They've opened my whole chest and abdomen, and they're poking things and moving things around. Like, I'm very uncomfortable when they change anything. I didn't used to be. Then the Imagination Pavilion happened, and we all know how I feel about that. So, I used to innately trust when Disney would change things because I was a child and didn't know any better. Then they changed my Imagination Pavilion, which as a small child was what I liked about Epcot. They destroyed it, and then they sneezed on it, and they kicked it in the trash can, and they haven't fixed it to this day. So I've become very skeptical when Disney wants to open heart surgery any of my favorite attractions and start poking stuff. Ever since then, it bothers me. Yeah. So, I was prepared to not like this, because they took down Snow White's Scary Adventure and replaced it with a roller coaster. I don't think so, guys. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that. My family has history with Snow White's Scary Adventure, a history that is deep and traumatic and scarring for my aunt, who would not ride attractions again for several years. And this is a fantastic story, and I thought it was hilarious that my aunt was scared of a ride that I could handle, and then they changed it. So I was prepared to not like this one, and I love it. I love that the little carts rock back and forth. I love that you go through the mine, but I especially love that they recycled the audio animatronics from Snow White's Scary Adventure and put them in the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I'm sure Disney did it for economical reasons. I'm sure that the AAs are super duper expensive, and it would probably make me swoon to know how expensive they are. So I'm sure that they kind of reused it and just, refurbished them for that purpose. But to me, the fact that a piece of this old classic ride is still in these rides, to me, means so much more than that. Like, I'm so excited that these animatronics get to live on a little bit. But my favorite part of this attraction is actually after you've finished your zippy, zoomy, turny swirlies, and you are coming down towards where you're about to exit the vehicle, and you look to your right, and there's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they're in the cottage, and they're dancing, and everything's happy and fun. But outside the cottage, though, that's how I feel about it, too. Sorry about that. Paused for a moment because the dog's reaction to what was outside the cottage was so overdramatic. Outside of that cottage, coming off the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, is the witch. And so you come off this huge rush and this huge high of being on the roller coaster, only to just kind of get punched in the face with what is about to happen next in this story. And it's from, such a swoop to such a drop. And it's like, I think about it for a few minutes afterwards, which is weird. I don't mean to get preoccupied with it, but the story to me is always the biggest part of what's going on with any Disney attraction or even any film. And so to me, the fact that after this huge adventure, there's what's about to happen is what's about to happen, and you know what's about to happen. It's sad, and so you kind of think about it for a few minutes afterwards, but not in like a, I hate this ride and I hate what's going to happen kind of way, but just kind of in a foreshadowing, your brain has put the pieces together, and if you're going with a child, they may not have put it together yet, and so it's kind of this, oh, that's what's going to happen. It's kind of sad, but I love it. I guess that's kind of crazy, but I do. Next on my list, number 3, Pirates of the Caribbean. I love this attraction. It's so exciting. It's exciting to walk into. You go up there, and as soon as you go under those big columns in that Spanish archway, and you can hear the song very quietly at first in the background, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. And usually when you say that, it's not a good thing. But in this case, it is. Because it's the smell of water. And I love water, and I love the smell of water. And it smells like water that's been sitting still for a while. Not in a stagnant, moldy, mossy, gross kind of way. But if you've ever visited a cave, like Ruby Falls and Lookout Mountain, or I don't know, some of the caves in Hannibal, Missouri, if you ever want to check out where Mark Twain wrote his stories. If you go into these deep caves or an underground lake or anything like that, there's a distinct smell that the water has, that it's very cool and crisp, and it's a very refreshing smell, and that's what Pirates smells like. It's weird, but it's perfect. And you head in there, and I love how the story goes from them being skeletons, and then you go back in time to when they were alive, and you see the sins that they committed, which were originally designed after the 7 deadly sins. Look it up, I promise. And you see these sins that they've committed, and that's what's landed them in this kind of eternal limbo because of what they've done. And so this is another one that I'm a little frustrated by changes that have been made to it, and the changes have been many changes, but Disney's always changing stuff. This is one that, unlike the last one, I do get a little grumpy about the changes that have happened, but it is what it is. Disney didn't want Disney World to be a museum and all that stuff that the people will lecture you about, and so yes, there have been changes. I just kind of don't like when changes are made to things that Walt himself was kind of involved with planning. And while that's more true of Pirates in California than it is of Pirates on our side of the country, it's still, because it involves him personally, it kind of roughs me up a little bit when they change it. Next on my list is the Carousel of Progress. This song has the park's greatest earworm. I know the Magic Kingdom has a lot of attractions that have their own song, but this one in particular, I will be humming for not minutes, guys, not hours, but sometimes days after I've ridden this attraction. Even sometimes throughout the year, if I'm having a particularly good day, I'll just start, there's a great big beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. It's so optimistic, and it's so exciting, and it makes you happy to be alive. It makes you happy to be seeing tomorrow and to live in a time when things are changing so much. And more importantly, the attraction makes you aware that every time is a time when things are changing so much. It takes you through decade after decade after decade, and you get to see all of the changes, and it's so hilarious because everybody in each decade is like, I don't think it gets any better than this. And then the next decade, they're like, oh yeah, well it did. And it's just fantastic. I love this attraction. I love the history of it. I love how it used to have the huge kind of Howard Stark Walt Disney plan for Epcot model up on the top floor of it. It's just fantastic. I love the Carousel of Progress. It makes me so excited. The history makes me excited. I love it. It's great. It's really addicting, but it's a fantastic attraction. And my number one will surprise nobody. My number 1 is the Haunted Mansion. Again, another one that had Walt involved in the California version. Another one that had, fantastic history. The conflict when they're making this attraction. Do we want it to be funny? Do we want it to be scary? Do we want it to be both? And how are we going to work that out? And then, of course, unlike Pirates, Walt passed away before they figured out which of those two it wanted to be on this attraction. And it's fantastic. It's a great attraction. I didn't realize until 3 years ago that you're actually supposedly die on this attraction, which when we had Mr. Toad that made those two, I think the only two, where you as a character in this story are supposed to have passed away on the attraction. Now without Mr. Toad on our side, Toad is still over in California, but I think now without Toad, I think Haunted Mansion is the only attraction where you are, again, as a character in the story of the attraction, are supposed to pass away. And it's one of those things where I don't know how I missed it as a kid. I think I was too busy looking for hidden Mickeys or something, but now it's obvious and it kind of freaks me out. But in a good Haunted Mansion kind of way. Tell me your top 10 attractions at Walt Disney World. I'd love to look forward to hearing them. And you can contact me, www.patreon.com/shiveringmouse, shiveringmouse@gmail.com, or at shiveringmouse1 on Facebook and Twitter. I so look forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much for joining me today for this video. I really enjoyed it because nothing makes me happier than talking about Disney. Tune in next time.